Happy because I'm happy. We started very well yesterday, and it's 9:15 now. We thank you for your diligence, your patience, your punctuality, because we have seen that you were connected by 9. And in Western Africa, we call this a quarter of respect, meaning that if you are about to start something, you need to do it by the next 15 minutes. This is a matter of respect. So thank you very much for your punctuality. We are now set to start. Greetings then from the victorious city of Cairo in Egypt. Extended greetings to all our guests in the room and the myriad of participants connected all over the world. Welcome to the day 2 of the 2023 Northern Africa Civil Society Regional Forum. Before going forward, let me briefly recall some housekeeping and general information at this point. Our meeting is set on an hybrid format, with participants here gathered in the meeting room in Cairo, and the civil society community and other stakeholders connected online. Whether you are in this room or online, the dynamic will be very participative. As for the floor, and it will be given to you. Interpretation is provided in Arabic, English, and French. If you are connected online on your laptop screen, select your preferred language by clicking on the dedicated icon at the bottom of the screen. The session is live streamed on LinkedIn, Vimeo, Twitter, YouTube, and Arabic is available to those connected on Zoom. Kindly share the links in your respective network to promote participation, as PACJA is doing since yesterday. You can intervene at any time using the conversation icon and the Q&A option, and dedicated colleagues from the bank and the civil society committee will be delighted to answer you or follow up with you. We have started answering to your queries, to your comments, to your questions online, and will continue with the support of the bank's relevant department. I may recall that yesterday we received more than 1,000 comments on LinkedIn, meaning you are very interested in this session and the thematic which is gathering us for these 2 days. I will not do a recap of yesterday's session because we will have a summary of the action points by end of today, right before the closing ceremony. But let me just highlight few points from yesterday. First of all, we had a very participatory session for day 1. I mentioned the level of attendance, more than 200 connected on Zoom, more than 1,000 reaction, comments, and participants connected on the bank's social networks as well. This session of yesterday's was enhanced by the presence of the African Development Bank country representative, and is with us today again, meaning that the collaboration is at the highest level in this region and in this country as well. We also have with us, and is here again today, the chair of the civil society, the Bank Civil Society Climate and Energy Bank Coalition, my brother Augustine, is here again today. So you will hear from him again today, as you did yesterday. And we also have all the civil society organizations from all over the world connected again. I will provide you with an update about who is connected from where in this world later on today. After the opening ceremony, which happened yesterday, and which was crowned by strong messages, we noted a convergence of views on the added value of civil society as a key stakeholder on the climate agenda. We then had a very high-level panel, and this panel highlighted the relevance of the thematic of this forum, the need to co-create a collaborative dynamic, the role of all the stakeholders. We emphasize on the relevance of a tripartite dialogue of the stakeholders. We also mentioned the prioritization of the resource mobilization for climate justice in Africa. And the keywords for yesterday was that the dialogue has started. The interface has been created. The bank is committed to always making the appropriate platform available. And with this mobilization, the dialogue must continue. This is why we are here again today. The dialogue will then continue today. And we are proposing to you the following agenda for this day too. First, we will have an experience sharing session led by civil society organizations themselves. We'll have two experiences, two ground experiences from Tunisia and Morocco. Then we'll have a specific session dedicated to an interactive consultation with civil society organizations on the process of developing the Bank Civil Society Engagement Action Plan 2024-2028. Our third station will be on the road to COP28, and this session will also be led by the Bank Civil Society Coalition on the road to COP28, dedicated to climate and energy, to identify together the priorities and strong messages to bring to the COP28 agenda. We will close the day by a kind of closing ceremony, and we'll try to keep the promise of ending the session today by 1 a.m. Cairo time, the latest. I can't see Ahmed, but I promised yesterday, but that we will keep the promise. Right, keep the promise. Right. Without further ado, I will here hand over to our moderator of the first session. She's sitting next to our country manager, Mrs. Sarah Eldomi. She's a communication professional as Youth Love Egypt Foundation. Since she is a communication person, I can promise you again that we'll have a lovely session for the next 90 minutes. Over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this fruitful introduction regarding Day 1 and Day 2. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the session on engaging civil society in mobilizing private sector financing for climate and green growth in Africa. The objective of this session is to explore the role of civil society organizations in ensuring that private sector investment align with the development needs of local communities and promote sustainable and inclusive growth. We will also discuss the challenges and the opportunities in leveraging private sector financing for green growth in Africa. I'm so proud today to introduce such models. So let me please introduce our esteemed speakers to you, Dr. Ibrahim Hadani, President of Asama PAC and Regional Office Coordinator at MAMCDD. Welcome with us. I hope you're here and hearing us now. Mike Granier, representing the Abel Granier Association, the Tunisian Association for Environmental Agriculture Education. So let me begin with Dr. Ibrahim Hadani. Dr. Ibrahim, would you please tell us more about your experience with engaging civil society for climate and green growth initiatives in Morocco?
Yes. Good morning, bonjour, sabah al-khair, tout le monde, bonjour.
Good morning, everybody.
Presentation is in French, but I will speak in English, if you don't mind, so the interpreter maybe can follow my presentation. I am Ibrahim Haddan from Morocco. Let me explain the ASMAPEC. ASMAPEC is Association Marocaine pour la protection de l'environnement et du climat, qui a été créée en 1986 au Maroc pour un peu
created in 1986 Morocco to be involved in environmental issues in general. This association became a member of the UN and the UNFCCC Convention, as well as UNEP, were members of all the UN organizations relating to climate change. In Morocco, there are a lot of associations.
30,000 environmental association. So we decided to create a kind of alliance in 2015. This Moroccan Alliance for Climate and Sustainable Development, c'est l'Alliance
Dr. Ibrahim, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but
yes.
would like you to speak in English, please. In French, sorry. in French.
In
yes.
French, okay,
Yeah,
in French,
thank you,
okay,
thank you.
okay, that's maybe, ouais. So, après, les associations environnementales se sont assemblées en 2015 pour créer un
environment associations met in 2016 to create a network to call the Moroccan Alliance for Climate Change and Sustainable Development, and this was done in 2015, which brought together about 800 civil society organizations in Morocco dealing with climate change. So that said, we are a very interactive Moroccan association, and like I said, this spans over the 12 regions of Morocco. And our mission is to work with Moroccan associations on climate, environment, and biodiversity, capacity building of its members in the area of environment, participatory development, implementation of implementation and evaluation of public policies. And as far as certain laws are concerned, the finance law, we participated in the 2019 and 21 finance bills. It also enabled us after each election. We participated in the implementation of the regional development plan or community action plans and development and policy plans. We also participated in the production of an integration document on the climate and biodiversity concept. And recently, to our portfolio, we also dealt with relating water, energy, and the next water, agriculture, energy nexus. We had some publications that were distributed to all
la société civile, les différents acteurs nationaux
stakeholders,
et territoriaux,
also
publics ou privés. Donc, ces cycles de rencontres,
this we took part in different discussions between civil society representatives, which was quite participative, on the new approaches to sustainable development, as well as the transitions towards a sustainable city.
Donc, nous allons aussi développer un nouveau concept.
So we're going to develop a new concept.
Les populations berbères de la
That is the
zone.
Berber population of the Moroccan zones where we have those Berber tribes. And we're also going to plan territorial dialogue and forums where local associations
les élus et
and
les
elected
autorités
officials, as well as local authorities will be involved. Next, the strengthening of civil society representation on that is government partnership, open government partnership, and the members of the National Committee on the Climate Change and Biodiversity. This is a committee that the government created in order to address the challenges of climate change and the loss of biodiversity. It also included the members of CAPSED as a center of skills and climate change in Morocco. The AMCDD is member of the PACJA, that is the Pan-African Alliance for Climate Justice, and they participate every year in activities that PACJA organizes in Africa. And the last one was in Morocco, in Marrakesh. The AMCDD is also a member of CAN, that is the Arab Climate Change Network for the Arab zone. It has also created committees like the National Committee for the Blue Economy, which deals with all aspects of the littoral, with fishing and the protection of the coastal areas and the economy of the coastal areas. Next, please. Now, as I said, we have organized several meetings. There was the first meeting that was organized on an approach for a better participatory and effective construction of a territorial plans. Like I said, after every election, we organize meetings, regional meetings, to discuss the territorial development plans and community action plans. Next, please. Now, we also did regional mobilizations after the elections in order to better mainstream democracy, climate change, and sustainable development in the territorial plans that are developed or proposed or that are formulated by the new elected officials. And as I said, there's the communal action plan, there's the regional development plan, and the national or regional strategic plan. Next, please. Now, the regional meetings continue to be held. And for instance, we organized one for the sustainable development following the crisis in the North Africa and the Middle East and the whole region. So we created a regional conference in an area that is suffering from water problems. And because there's a lot of demand for water in areas that are highly populated, especially there's also the industrial development that requires water. So there's a lot of water challenges there. So we've launched projects. For instance, we started a project with the support of the European Union and other partners for the Democracy Performance Index following the elections. We launched this, and we undertook local studies in the regions, and we were rather disappointed because the results were not very encouraging. So 1 out of 1,000 members of the population knows what are the projects that the commune or the region is going to undertake in their territory. So it was very surprising. There's lack of communication between the elected officials and the members of the population. And so citizens that benefit from projects are not aware of those projects. This was a shocking results because even the authorities were surprised with those results. And so people carry out election campaigns, and once they are elected into office, these gentlemen and ladies that are elected remain in their offices, they work together, and do not go back to the grassroots that had elected them to explain which projects they want to undertake in the region or in the commune. Next slide, please. Now, here there's another activity, which is the preparation for the COP. Every year we work with the Ministry of Environment and the Energy Transition to prepare the COP, the climate change COP. There are also meetings that are held with the same department on COP that is linked to biodiversity. So there are meetings between Moroccan associations that work in the area of electricity and energy, and with the departments concerned, and especially we focus on the main issues that we have to defend, all of us, during the meetings, during the COP meetings. And generally, we go with a clear vision between the government and the civil society, for instance, which are the points to be defended, which are the things to propose, or which are the points that we should support, both in the area of climate change as well as in biodiversity. Next slide, please. And so this was a continental meeting that took place just before the annual meeting of the International Monetary Fund. We organized a meeting with our friends in Africa, especially Pac Jacques, that is in Marrakesh. They were invited to have a meeting to discuss the reforms to be proposed. That is the reforms on the financing to be proposed on the occasion of this historic opportunity. The IMF and the World Bank organized the annual meeting in Marrakesh, and we discussed at length the problems that Africa faces. We spoke especially about the toxic financing, that is a financing that destroys nature or disrupts the climate. And so the bank sometimes provides financing that have adverse impacts on biodiversity or the climate. For instance, when we build infrastructure which occupies a territory that is generally used by farms, by livestock, or sometimes they may build a road or a dam, forgetting that there are animals that live in nature in the area. So this is a toxic financing, and that should be revisited, and to make sure that it doesn't impact negatively or cause the loss of biodiversity or impact negatively climate change. Next slide, please. No, this is one of the events that we organize in Rabat. Here we organized marches for or walks for climate. This was in Rabat. We organized this in Rabat, Marrakesh, and Casablanca. These were walks that involved youths and members of the civil society who expressed their disappointment with the government policy that continues to impact climate indirectly or directly. There's, the issue of a lack of water and health issues were also mentioned. So, like I said, lately we organized a meeting in Marrakesh. That was last October, and it's the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund that had this joint meeting. And on that occasion, we expressed ourselves on the policies of those institutions within the framework of their financing of projects, whether in Morocco or in Africa in general. There's policies or financing that doesn't take into account environmental protection and the protection of biodiversity. Of course, we're not against the development of our continent or of other territories, but we are also concerned over the increasing impact of biodiversity and climate change, which also impacts human life and the life of animals. And now this is an action that we undertook in a region that is impacted by the water problems, with the problem of the loss of plant cover. This well, and this happens in a cyclical manner. That is, there's loss of the plant cover, there's erosion, and then lack of water. So those zones suffer from shortage of water. So we held a meeting with the framework of a project that was undertaken, and that was called territorial resilience to the climate change problems. So we had this event in the region, and we're also continuing to hold such regional meetings in order to discuss the resilience of the territories. In fact, we have forests in those territories. We have humid areas, and we have the coastal areas where we have to mobilize associations or civil society organizations in order to have them impose their own views and opinions to the local authorities and elected officials, so that they should also show some interest in phenomena that affect the citizens' biodiversity and nature. So these are all the partners with whom we worked in those projects, in the actions that we have undertaken. I think this must be the last slide, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim Hadani. This is very fruitful presentation. Basically, we all face a challenge of the increasing the impact of biodiversity and climate change problems, as mentioned by your side, and the experience is really interesting and very fruitful. Moving forward to, thank you. Okay, moving forward to Ms. Mike Granier, what about your experience, please, in engaging with civil society, and how this, what is the role that you have been done basically with climate and green growth in Tunisia?
Bonjour à tous.
Bonjour.
Good morning, everyone. I'm trying to share my screen. Are you going to simply say next slide? Is that okay with you? Well,
Yeah, it's okay. The screen is now, we can see it.
Vous voyez l'écran, j'ai partagé.
you have a screen. I think I'll share it for you, says the technician.
Yeah, thank you.
Alors, l'Association tunisienne d'agriculture environnementale a été créée en 2011 suite à une expérience qui avait été déjà menée 50 ans auparavant en Tunisie sur la réhabilitation des sols tunisiens. Il faut savoir que la Tunisie est un pays qui possède, je crois, des terres les plus dégradées, puisque 85% des terres cultivables sont en voie de dégradation. C'est les chiffres du ministère de l'Agriculture. Et notre association regroupe des chercheurs dans l'agronomie, des agronomes, des agriculteurs, des étudiants et des citoyens. Notre mission, c'est l'accompagnement de l'agriculteur ou de l'agricultrice sur le terrain pour identifier d'abord les problèmes. Car il ne sert à rien de donner des solutions aux problèmes de l'agriculteur si on a d'abord, il n'est pas déjà participant à la recherche de solutions. Et de leur montrer que des bonnes pratiques existent qui peuvent inverser les problèmes dont ils souffrent et donner des résultats pour leur vie actuelle et pour le futur des jeunes de la zone rurale. Next. Nous voulons surtout renforcer la résilience des systèmes agricoles tunisiens dans le cadre des changements climatiques et face à la baisse de fertilité des sols et maintenant surtout à la crise de l'eau. Donc, encore une fois, nous mobilisons toutes les expertises possibles pour identifier les problèmes, puis chercher les stratégies avec l'agriculteur.
And look for strategies with the farmer. Some of the main problems of Tunisia is the degradation of soils, which makes it such that so far, as we've done with the breeding of goats and bovines, so most of the cattle feed comes from abroad. which is not very feasible for small farmers. So we have to look for agricultural strategies that are profitable for farmers. And that is what we are working at with them, and that is with the farmers and stock breeders and with the national institutions. We try to show them through training, first of all, the farm school that is the most efficient most of the time. And we try to show them how feasible the proposals that we bring to them are. We also create networks of farmers depending on their area of specialization. Next, please. So as you can see in those pictures, we have the meetings with the families of farmers, and then we go to the farms to identify plants that grow naturally. We look at the nature of the soils and the possibility of developing the potentials, and then we try to train them on the proper height of trees, and then the machine agriculture in all its forms, and we also look at the small farm equipment that can be used in a way as not to fragilize the lands any further. And finally, we have grazing farmlands. Right now, we use, well, our farmers have attracted by the straw strategy. There are several years ago, we used to use a mixture of seed to have a very rich fodder. And this goes back to the antiquity in the Mediterranean areas. And when we're looking for, we looked with the farmers at the most appropriate seed and seedlings, and we used metal, or messine rather, which makes it possible to cover the land through during the rainy season, and then to provide green fodder or dry fodder or
Alors, voyez le résultat en
so you can see the results in 2022. It also makes it possible to use the spaces between trees. So we build
qui en même temps nourrissent le sol, comme les légumineuses que l'on voit.
So you see the leguminous plants that are planted that also fertilize the lands, and the cereals that are planted also bring nitrogen to the soil, and they also make the growth of microorganisms that are beneficial for the mobilization of oil seeds plants.
Donc, c'est vraiment pour une technique qui permet.
So this is a technique that makes it possible to multiply the benefits. We have a complete feed that is almost equal to a kilo of a mixture that is equal to a fodder unit. It can also be preserved in several ways, either dry, where we're working at seeing how we can preserve these fodder, and also at certain periods of plant farming.
Et ensuite, on laisse repousser
So we can let the land to lay fallow for about 2 months, and then we plant the fodder again. And this method makes it possible to reduce erosion. We tested this some years ago during torrential rain periods in one of the regions of Tunisia. That was in Cap Ban, that is the part that was planted.
Métail n'a pas bougé. Tandis qu'à côté, des champs étaient ravagés par la...
The livestock didn't go anywhere, it stayed there in the region. So we also noticed that there's a gap in the conservation of the soil humidity. Well, initially, the researchers had told us that we're going to increase the competition for water between the plants and the livestock. But we've realized that this is rather the opposite that obtained. And then there's also something that you can note in
la photo du bas, c'est que
in the photo below. That is, there was this predator that is coccinelle. Well, it reappeared, and we saw this in all regions of Tunisia. And from the moment that we planted this plant, the coccinelle that we thought had disappeared reappeared. We also noticed that this makes it possible to well, there's an invasive plant that is very negative for plants. But after 2 or 3 years, you know, the things get better. Next slide, please. So you see,
vivant, quelque sorte.
You're seeing 2 pictures here. In 2022, you see a couple of farmers that
sans aucune irrigation parce qu'ils n'ont pas d'eau sur leur ferme. Et ils ont pu nourrir 6 vaches.
You see, they didn't have water. But
qui a été une année désastreuse par la sécheresse. Et au contraire.
But this year, because of drought, you know, things didn't quite work. And you see behind, there was a little water. By some small measure of irrigation, they were able to feed their livestock in an area that was absolutely the victim of climate catastrophe. We didn't have enough water throughout the year 2023. Well, the year is still there, but we still don't have water. So we needed some little irrigation. Please, can you move on to the next one? Here we created a mixture to increase the nutritive value and the strength of the cover, of the plant cover too. We need at least a cereal. We need a cereal like wheat and other local grains that is resistant. We need a leguminous plant that clings to the cereal here in Tunisia. Well, this is done together. It is not optional. We try to have a very dense mixture. Today we use only 4 species, 2 cereals and 2 fodder crops. And you can see that the dose should be between 120 and 156 kilos per hectare. Next, please. Over the past years, this method was supported by by GIZ,
coopérative
a
française,
French cooperative company,
par l'Union européenne,
and by the European Union,
l'Institut français,
by the French Institute.
viser la valorisation de l'héritage
And the idea was to develop biodiversity by using ancient practices to develop and make productivity that is necessary for the farmers, because there are many olive plants. People think that the olive plants have aged, whereas the olive plant doesn't have any age. And finally, right now, we are using new practices
la banque fourragère qui est connue en Afrique d'ailleurs, déjà dans le reste de l'Afrique.
With the fodder crop, with mesclun or fodder plants that we plant in a very dense manner, and if the shrubs continue to grow during the dry season, virtually from May to November, which provides food of a high nutritive value for the livestock. So these are our contacts. We always try to work closely with other associations, and we are part of the Tunisian agroecological team that brings together about 45 organizations. We therefore try to coordinate our efforts depending on our various organizations, objectives, expertise, in such a way that we can have something that is sustainable, and we try to influence as much as possible decisions that are taken in areas that are most often forgotten. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mike Garnier, for such an amazing presentation. And basically, the file of agriculture will always be challenges related to the climate change. Thank you again, Mrs. Garnier and Dr. Hadani, for such a valuable contribution. We really appreciate your expertise and the experience shared by you. So let's continue together to work towards mobilizing private sector financing for climate and green growth, ensuring that the development needs of local communities and promoting sustainable and inclusive growth in Africa. Now the floor is open for questions. So please start by asking Dr. Garnier and Dr. Hadani as well. Here you go. Thank you. Any questions, please? No one wants to ask a question? Yeah, please start.
Well, mine is more of a comment. The last time or the first time I visited Tunisia, I went to a place in the north of Tunisia called Bizerte. And this is the topmost part of the country. And I think that's the topmost part of the continent getting into Europe. Let nobody from Morocco think that I'm saying it's not Tangier, but I was in Bizerte. What I saw in terms of agriculture in this country was amazing. But over the last couple of years, the droughts that have happened in that country have really impacted agriculture, I guess. So, and this only shows the importance of us engaging in raising finance for adaptation. In the sense that as long as we're negotiating and talking about climate finance, crying every day that adaptation finance is not enough, the realities on the ground are, are shocking. For a country like Tunisia to lack water for the animals and for the farms, you would imagine what is happening in other countries like sub-Saharan African countries. So these comrades, I'm just emphasizing the point I raised yesterday. We cannot continue to depend on public finance, which is very insignificant. We have to look of innovative ways of bringing private finance into adaptation for the continent. And I like the presentation that came from Tunisia because you now understand that it's not a problem of sub-Saharan Africa alone. You see the challenges we are facing all over Africa. In fact, Africa is recognized as a continent with special needs and circumstances, which means the vulnerability of this continent is more than any other continent. I didn't say any other country, but any other continent put together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your valuable contribution. Another question, please, or another statement that can be done by you. Hi, Dr. Najwa Bouraoui. Would you like to start your presentation or no, you have just, okay, you can start. Thank you.
Bonjour tout le monde et good morning everybody and thank you for this beautiful session where we share our experiences, where local and national associations share their experiences. But I think it will be necessary to have other experiences from other countries or other associations that deal with climate change. However, I'd like to say that Tunisia and North Africa are greatly affected by climate change, especially in the water sector. We have not had rain for a long time, and there is an water shortage. And we have become an arid country. Just to say that associations, be they local or national, do a lot to educate citizens, the local community, as far as their habits are concerned, to also fight against climate change and ensure green growth, not only in Tunisia, but the entire Africa. And so the impact of these local associations is very important to assist local populations to overcome these climate change crises, as well as biodiversity issues. So through the projects carried out by local associations on the ground, we're able to deal with some of these problems, as well as change the habits of the local populations to preserve what is remaining of biodiversity. So I believe the role of these associations, these associations need financial support. So we need to carry out major projects, and we need major financing in order to meet our objectives. So mobilizing the private sector, who unfortunately doesn't have a lot of issues, doesn't have a lot of interest in climate change issues, is necessary. They must get involved in order to assist local associations to carry out overarching projects in order to meet our objectives, which is green growth and fighting against climate change. So we really need a lot of mobilization, funding, so that these local associations can actually meet the objectives of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Najwa Bouraoui. Okay, moving forward to the next question, please. Okay, my Granny and Dr. Ibrahim Hadani will start by my Granny, please.
Je voudrais ajouter.
I just want to add
Il faudrait aussi que des incitations soient faites au niveau national.
We need a lot of engagement at national level, and this should. I think we also need to reward all those at national level who are doing a lot for climate change to ensure sustainable development, especially with the issue of climate change and this recurrent drought. So those who multiply seeds, those who are used to climate challenges or who come up with new methods for agronomy in order to come up with climate resistant seeds, we need to encourage them. National and international authorities need to encourage them because it is lack. At our level, we can do a lot to raise awareness with farmers, youth, to encourage them to get into research. But if the civil society organization itself, the local citizen, is not encouraged to trot down the path we have created, then I believe we would make more progress. Also, there is another problem: pollution. Pollution is relatively very high in Tunisia. For example, in Bizet, we discovered that we worked with 8 farmers. We realized that the chemicals they use actually changed the microorganisms in the area. Above the lagoon, there was a lake that was completely dried off, which actually regulated the climate in that area. So it is all of these problems that we're trying to highlight, and it is for this reason that we actually need a lot of support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my Granny. Moving forward to Dr. Ibrahim Hadani. Thank you.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Good morning.
Good morning again. I want to thank Madame Granny for her presentation. As it was said by our colleague who visited Bizet, Northern Africa suffers from water issues, and this is due to the policies carried out by government for the past 40 years. So the water that we've had is absorbed by 3 major sectors: agriculture, that consumes about 80%, but then we also have the industrial sector, and mainly the tourist industry. So the area south of the Mediterranean has a lot of tourists per year, and they have a lot of need for water. This is not factored in. There's a huge consumption of water in resort towns, pools, and so we have understood that 12% of water used in these industrial areas, 12% is used and just 8% is just used for regular consumption. So I think these are policies that we need to review here in Morocco. We continue to produce tomatoes to export to Europe, and then the population also needs to consume a lot. Also, there is the cultivation of watermelons and other produce that need to be exported. When dams were built, we forgot to protect the environment, and consequently, there is reforestation. There is we cut the trees. There's exposure that leads to erosion. And in Morocco, this policy of building dams started in the 70s, and we have about 200 of them. And these dams have we have actually complained to the government about this policy and the consequences of building these dams. I mean, if we have to build these dams, we need to build or create the necessary watershed that would protect any spillovers from these dams. So I guess it all boils down to the different policies that are in place and that need to be reviewed. Because this is a problem that needs to be reviewed with climate change. And so we need to review all the plans and strategies. So that is just what I wanted to add. And also support what Madame Garnier said, because most when we talk about agriculture, I think we also need to think about coming up with different seed types that may consume less water, favor local species that are more productive, and also think about reviewing the use of herbicides and pesticides that may affect the local environment. That's the remark I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And here now we go to Evelia, please. We need your support in answering some questions.
Yes, it's just a question. Yeah. Okay, so it's just a comment. I just want to congratulate Dr. Adane and Mrs. Granier for their presentation. And as a part of the civil society community engagement division, I think so those experiences can be taken as a capacity building for all the organization, and we'll be more than happy to share it on the civil society engagement platform. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving to Edward, he's connected with us from Abidjan. Hi, Edward.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Moderator. I hope you can hear me well and clearly. Yes, I would like to, of course, emphasize on the point that Evelia has just made. We have an online interactive platform for civil society engagement, and such experiences would like to have share them on the platform to continue the debate and discussion even beyond the forum. This will, of course, help to raise awareness, but also share this very important and critical knowledge with the vast civil society space. Mais nous avons une question qu'on a reçue de.
We have a question that we received from Abdelaziz Bashar. It has to do with funds. He wants to know how to actually accelerate the mobilization of funds. So maybe we would allow our panelist, Dr. Ibrahim, and to actually talk about their experiences on how to raise funds from the private sector in order to support the good work that they're actually carrying out in Morocco and Tunisia, respectively.
Dr. Ibrahim, are you with us?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Edouard.
Thank you, Mr. Edward. Let's say that the funds that can be mobilized by civil society organizations are not enough. These organizations don't have a lot of money. I think they have a role, a parallel role, and a complementary role to government. And generally, these funds we have are funds for capacity building, funds for communication, raising awareness, getting an participative approach from the civil society or the local population. So what we need are major financing. So when we talked to the World Bank and the IMF in Morocco, we told them that you award millions of dollars. I think even the AFDB does that, but none of these amounts raised is meant for the civil society who accompanies the implementation of these projects that will be carried out in the countries. So that is why we propose to the World Bank to review its policy of granting credit, because with credit, everybody can have access or pay back that with credit, but the civil society that follows and monitors these projects don't receive anything. So maybe they could earmark 1% of these credit to the civil society organizations who would be the implementing arm, who would follow up the implementation, assess the impact of this project, and ensure that these projects are beneficiary to the public population and to the environment. So we've had a good experience, but like I say, we need the funds to implement any support action.
Okay, thank you so much. Basically, there are other questions. So if anyone, please, can you raise your hands? Okay, sure. You can go, Sarah. Thank you.
Bonsoir à tous, je suis Sarah, je suis une volontaire avec l'organisation Youth Love Egypt.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a volunteer with Youth Love Egypt. I want to thank you for all the presentation. I think your associations are doing fantastic work. I have a question for Dr. Ibrahim. I want to ask, what is the main obstacle when you talk about your role as a liaison between the civil society organizations and the elected officials. So what is the main obstacle that you face? Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. I think that what we realize is that everyone welcomes us, be they political persons, the elected officials. The issue that we have, however, is the implementation of the activities or proposals that we made. Civil society organizations are an important stakeholder in the political lives of elected officials, but the issue is how do we succeed to implement the actions or activities that we propose. Our mission is one of advocacy to government and so we would like the mission maybe to talk about activity in a humid area, maybe some activity that is affecting or that would have an incidence on an area, maybe say a road from Tangier to Marrakesh that will go to a humid zone. So we would do an advocacy, for example, who were able to deviate the highway not to degrade that area. It was actually a success for us. Or do advocacy, and sometimes at the Mediterranean port, we organized that there was a lot of fishing. We actually made advocacy to the Justice Department. We were able to stop that. And those concerned were punished. And so we don't really have a problem based on our presence or the projects we propose. The issue would be with implementing the suggestions we've made. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike Rani. Other questions, please. So, are there any questions? Evelia, are there any questions regarding the chats in the Q&A section?
No question from the
Okay, thank you all so much. And it was a really fruitful session. Thank you, Mike Granier. Mike Granier is raising her hands. Yeah, you can go. Thank you. Are there any questions, Mike Granier? Do you want to add something?
My mic is muted.
Please open your mic. You're muted.
Oui, je voulais rejoindre le docteur Ibrahim.
I just want to add my voice to Dr. Ibrahim. It is not a question of us being deceived. What we want is being supported as far as implementation of activities are concerned. So what we have is just the little amount we get from international donors who themselves have their own vision or expectation. So what we want is assistance. Locally, we don't have the necessary support from the government. We would like that if an international donor like the AFCB comes up with a program that meets the need of the country, Tunisia, Morocco, any other country. They need to know that there should be an amount that should be reserved for the civil society organization. At the moment, we're actually sponsoring certain sponsorships to encourage students to carry out research in certain areas on how to preserve water. And it's difficult to actually give scholarship beyond a period of a year. It's just a minimum amount, not. But we cannot ask a youth to actually carry out research, displace themselves. That's what they need at least 400 dinars to fund this research. And that is our problem. We don't have the support. Agriculture is at the short end of any national investment. Some are actually, some banks are actually doing a lot, but we need this. We need this to happen often, and this is what is worrying to us because it is not current. Thank you, and we're left to our own devices.
Thank you so much again. Please, Edward, do you have any comments?
We don't have any further comments or questions on LinkedIn, on Zoom. Maybe on LinkedIn, if we can ask my colleagues who are on LinkedIn, Jerry, if we have any comments coming in through.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. No, not comments or questions really, but to just acknowledge people who are logged in. We have people from Lesotho, Burkina, Ivory Coast, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Benin, Sudan, and Spain. But really no comments, just acknowledging and appreciating the forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all. And basically, we have 2 minutes now. Please, Mrs. Garnier, I want you to end up your presentation with a quote and with a comment if you have, or as you just mentioned, the challenges is always in leveraging the needed finance. However, we need just a quote from you and from Dr. Hadani as well. Thank you all. Dr. Granier, we can start by you.
Oui, je remercie la MAD pour cette opportunité.
I want to thank the AFDB for this opportunity to share our experience. I want to say that the experience I shared with you is an experience that can easily be reproduced. We have documents that could be shared to those who are interested in countries in North Africa, and why not Egypt? I don't know if other countries, maybe Southern Africa has the same climate. I haven't had discussions with researchers in South Africa. It is possible. Experiences have been done in Senegal, some in Mozambique. So would like to have some feedback on a technical aspect. And we can also share these documents in English, French, and Arabic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grani. Moving to Dr. Ibrahim Hadani.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Jerry here. Before you conclude the session. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. To do justice to the people that are on LinkedIn, there is the there's a comment, which if you allow me, I can read, that the way out is to design profitable schemes that attract private sector to get involved. The schemes could consider use of innovation in financing, technology, and science that could be supported at the beginning and gradually give lead to private sector and civil society collaboration. This is from Ayman Bashir. I don't see the country where she comes from, but that's the comment coming in from LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So answering that question, Dr. Ibrahim Hadani with us.
Yes, okay. Well, je remercie.
I would like to thank the African Development Bank for having organized this workshop, this event, and I would like to, especially for inviting the civil society organizations, especially the two complementary themes, this agriculture, which is the basis for the local development for African countries, and on the other side, the choice of organizing of environmental protection associations that protects the environment. And we've also dealt with the water, climate, and agriculture nexus. And so we should bear this in mind. It's a nexus that is important for the development of our countries, whether we're talking about North Africa or Africa in general. And it's very important to keep the parallel between agriculture, which would meet the needs of our countries, especially we in Morocco. We always defend not only food security, but we also defend food sovereignty. Each country should be sovereign and should be in a position to produce its agricultural needs to meet the needs of their populations. On the other hand, we also look at environmental and climate protection. We should also look at pollution, because agriculture contributes to pollution. For instance, about 80% of water and soils in Morocco, because they're wastes that are very toxic. There are also industries that deposit toxic material in rivers, and then there are waters. And right now, this is a time for the collection of olive oil, whether we're talking about Tunisia or North Africa in general. The olive processing plants that deposit waste in waterways and streams. So we probably should continue to make a balance between those two sectors. That is, to produce is good, but we should also protect. And this is what will preserve life on Earth and in our region. Thank you.
Thank you all for such a fruitful session. And ending this session, we will find ways to mitigate the current challenges and leveraging private sector financing for green growth in Africa. Thank you so much for all your contributions, such an interesting and amazing session. Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim Hadani and Dr. Mike Garani, for such a fruitful and valuable experience you shared with us today. Moving forward to the next session, thank you all and hope you enjoy it.
Thank you for your kind moderation. It was nice to see that you have done a nice job. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think Sarah and our two presenters deserved a more engaged round of applause. Thank you very much, Sarah. And
thank you so much.
Thank you for this brilliant moderation, highlighting best practices, community experiences, and lessons learned from citizen engagement. From the base of the pyramid, as we used to say in the bank. from the bottom of the pyramid. Thank you very much, Zainab. Since yesterday, I'm not saying Zainab, but Zainab. And these CSO-led experiences are of paramount importance for us, and they are at the heart of the bank's engagement with civil society, for which this forum is the dedicated and most preferential platform. Thanks again, Sarah, and bravo, since they spoke in French, bravo to the two CSOs. I know that many of you CSOs across the continent and across the region were keen to present their experiences on this platform, because CSOs are doing an amazing job, but sometimes they miss the platform to present it, to share their challenges, and to seek for further opportunities to leverage on what they are doing. So thank you for agreeing to share with us. And as my colleagues, Edward and Evelia stressed on, our division has a dedicated civil society platform where you will be able to share your relevant experiences, and the banks will also support the promotion and the showcasing of these experiences. And now this is the right time to transition to concrete joint initiative the bank and civil society are engaging on, which is the agenda of the climate and energy on the continent, and for which agenda the bank and civil society have set up a coalition. This coalition has prepared together a joint declaration which has been displayed at the COP27 here in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. This year, the coalition has started wide consultations, starting with the CSO Forum in regional, in Eastern Africa, Nairobi, Southern Africa, Pretoria, and now we are in Northern Africa. The coalition is here represented by its chair himself, our very own Augustine. You remember yesterday the illustration from our country manager of the Baobab in Africa. High personalities in Africa are also represented by Baobab. So we have a Baobab here. Augustine is here, and I know that many young people and women and my brother here and myself are maybe the less younger in the room, but we are all under the umbrella of the Baobab. So it will take us through the importance of engaging civil society on the climate agenda, climate justice, as Pakja used to say, and then I will come back to share on a specific event, a very high-level event, the bank and civil society are preparing to hold together for the next COP28. So over to you, our Baobab Augustine. Maybe, may I ask our volunteer to give the space to Augustine? Yeah, just for a few minutes. And I will be glad if you can come by my side. I will be happy to have you. Yeah. Thank you very much. So Augustine, as Augustine is proceeding, this session will be followed by another one, which will be dedicated to the development of the bank civil society engagement action plan, which will cover the year 2024-2028. But for now, we are staying on our climate and energy agenda. I think
we cannot move Baobab easily. It needs to take time.
Yes. Over to you, Augustine. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for the wonderful moderation. I'm so pleased to see you people handling issues for the continent. And as we are facing out, we know the continent will be in good hands. Thank you again for
Thank you so much.
Moderation.
Thank you.
So, comrades, permit me, I always say comrades because we are always in a battle like civil society, right? So most of the time I forget that I have other people that may not be comrades, but this is a civil society forum. So permit us use the word comrades all the time. The coalition, Civil Society, African Development Bank Coalition for Climate and Energy was a conception that we've had since 6 years ago. And it came based on a need that we discovered. We have the Civil Society Committee, which, as my sister Zainab usually passionately tells us how it came about, and we're so proud of not just the committee, but the division. We also discovered that in spite of the fact that there is the committee, it was important for all the bank sectors to know and engage with the civil society, in particular, at a very high level. Sometimes we may take decisions or we may have inquiries at a certain level, and the division in charge of civil society asks the department concerned, and the response may not be coming as soon as possible, which means even in the bank, the division also struggles to make its importance known. And with climate change and energy issues on the continent being a matter of urgency, and for us to have positions that are very clear and succinct, to engage in the negotiations and the various spaces, this coalition was created. And we're in the second year today. Our first joint action was before and during the COP27 that took place here in Sharm el-Sheikh. That brought a lot of attention, because for those who did not believe that the bank can work with the civil society, they saw that the statement that came out reflected the civil society concerns and positions, which the bank had to abide to. So, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this year, we think it is important to highlight the issues that are of importance to the continent at COP28, which is climate change adaptation and access to energy to build resilience and adaptive capacity of the continent. We have come a long way. COP27 took place here in Africa. We said that was a COP of African people. It should be the COP of African people, rather than being a COP, an African COP, because an African COP could just be a COP that takes place in the continent, which may not reflect the concerns and the expectations and the priorities of the people of the continent. So we could still make COP28 a COP of African people, even though it's taking place in Dubai. How do we make it a COP of African people? We got the good news of the loss and damage fund that will be operationalized by COP28. And that decision was taken here in Egypt at COP27. Over the months that followed, we've seen the devastation climate change has done in all regions of the continent, starting from the north to the Horn of Africa, West and Central Africa, and Southern Africa. So no part of the continent has been spared this year. We will be highlighting the importance of that operationalization of that fund that should meet the needs of the people that have done the least to contribute to climate change. We'll also be concentrating, and as you could see yesterday, we are talking of mobilizing private finance for adaptation, because adaptation is key for African resilience. For the African continent, we have to adapt to the already compounding situation. May I repeat what I said yesterday? There's a report by TFON that was published last year, 2022, in July, that says many sub-Saharan African countries will be spending 5 times the budget dedicated that is for adaptation than the budget dedicated for healthcare. It means we are already paying for adaptation with our health. The governments are spending a lot of money because they have no choice. We must adapt. In fact, we usually say we must adapt or we adapt. We have no other choice. So how do we highlight this in COP28? It is good for those things to come out very clear. Again, according to Article 34 of the Sharm el-Sheikh Plan of Implementation, which was the outcome of COP27 here, it states very clearly that climate finance for vulnerable regions, especially sub-Saharan Africa, are better in grants. We also want to highlight that point out there at COP28. And we believe that if such a decision has been taken at COP, we rather highlight it and make sure that in accordance with Article 9 of the Paris Agreement, developed countries really provide the finances that is needed for adaptation, whose cost is ever increasing. And for the continent, that is very, very important. Then, in the energy sector, we have treated, most of the time we've treated adaptation in isolation without considering the role of access to clean and sustainable energy for resilience building and adaptation. So we'll be highlighting the importance of access to energy, to clean and sustainable energy for resilience building and adaptation in the continent. Those are the key points. That is access to energy, access to clean, affordable, and efficient energy for resilience and adaptive capacity for the continent, and finance for adaptation, basing our argument on Article 9 of the Paris Agreement and the Sharm el-Sheikh Plan of Implementation, Article 34, which says climate finance for regions like Africa should come in form of grants. So the developed countries will have to sit up and provide the necessary finances. And how do we intend to deliver this? After all these consultations, these 3 key points will be presented in various ways. As we speak, there's a big forum being prepared in Yaoundé, Cameroon, by an initiative called the Youth for Adaptation Finance in Africa. The forum is taking place from the 16th to the 18th of November, and it will come out with what we call the Yaoundé African Youth Call on more than doubling adaptation finance for Africa's future. Why do they have that as a theme? It's because in in Glasgow, there was this decision to double adaptation finance. But once you look at the adaptation finance that is around, that is being reported, you see that it's very, very insignificant. So if they only double it, it will not make any difference. So the campaign of the young Africans is that if for there to be effective adaptation, we need to target more than just doubling. More than doubling can be many times, can be 10 times, can be 100 times, but we need more than just doubling adaptation finance if we have to meet the needs of Africa and guarantee its future. That is one. And that will be presented at COP28 at an event. The AFDB and other partners are supporting that forum. Secondly, all these consultations of the civil society forum that we're having in all the sub-regions of the continent, in fact, the Yaoundé Youth Forum will be taking place side by side this consultation for Central African region. So when we get, Yaoundé will be the final, that is for Central Africa, it will be the final. We have that kind of declaration that we had last year, a joint declaration. And it will still be focusing on adaptation finance for Africa, access to sustainable, efficient, and affordable clean energy for building resilience and adaptive capacity of African communities. Then the declaration will be presented at an event at COP28. So we are talking of two main events. If the youths on their side are saying the same thing, and we are also saying the same thing, I think that voice will be louder, because wherever you go and see Africans, they're telling you about adaptation, finance, and access to sustainable energy for building resilience and capacity of African communities, and of course, the operationalization of the loss and damage fund. Generally, this is what we are going to be doing at COP, inside events, and even in main meetings. If for this time around, we have only these items as priorities, without ignoring the others, would have delivered for the continent. Otherwise, I think for the decor, for the level of the event this year, we are targeting very high level African personalities to be part and of our declaration. And again, we'll also be targeting the funding community and multilateral development banks or institutions to come to our declaration, to the session for our declaration. So I think, Luther, I've said the essential. Maybe you can have more details. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Augustine, for this informative and comprehensive brief on the continent's priorities in the climate agenda. Indeed, it's interesting to see how the bank and civil society are able to identify together these priorities. And we are fully aligned with the priorities you mentioned. I think Zainab will agree with me that in the Sahel, we used to say everything is urgent. But among the emergencies, we need to select